We were the first podcast app on the iPhone. Yeah, we were the first and we were the biggest for a long time. And we were the biggest on the iPhone until Apple launched their own podcast app. And on Android, we were the biggest for years.
Wow.
Wow, then I'm Sean Gold, today's guest on Tool Thinker.
Would allow me to let go of my 9-to-5 job.
Let's dig a little bit deeper. Who do we really want to target here? And that's where you live.
Sometimes.
If you love long night, then be a startup founder. Just do it. Take the leap.
I always said it, the boss, even for the money that we were earning.
You have to pivot or else you'll run out of money.
Hi, Noah.
Hi, Mark.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing today? Welcome to Tool Tinker.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
I like your photo in the background there.
Thank you.
Nice.
I like race cars and I like nature, so combines the two.
Oh, I thought you liked business.
I like business too.
Okay, nice. And how do you define yourself? More as a startup coach right now?
Yeah, I define myself as a startup coach.
So where it all begun, like where you grew up, what inspired you to get into startup?
I grew up in New York. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial. I was always like, sort of typical like entrepreneurial kid story, always like selling or building something. And I worked in after college. I worked in finance for a couple of years, but pretty quickly realized I wanted to build something. And at that time, to date myself, the dot-com boom was going on, and the internet companies were growing and exploding everywhere, and I wanted to be at the center of that. So I relocated to San Francisco. I drove out to San Francisco on a motorcycle from New York with no job, and at the time in San Francisco, like the whole startup scene was booming, and I got very lucky. I was introduced to the founders of StubHub, the ticket company, while they were still at Stanford Business School, and I ended up joining them very early, and that sort of that experience, my first experience working at a startup, sort of got me to realize that was going to be how I was going to spend a lot of my life in and around startups. And I just loved it.
Oh, wow. How old were you when you went to San Francisco?
I was 25.
You were 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Still young. You still could have made a lot of mistakes and recovered, right?
Yeah. Still can. I'm 50 now. I can still make a lot of mistakes and recover.
Well, you're in a much better position now to back yourself up if anything happens.
That's true.
You've had some successful ventures, which we'll get into. But yeah, that was pretty brave. Did anyone in your family have this kind of background interest, like startup?
Yeah, I joke now that I'm a coach that everybody in my family was either an entrepreneur or a therapist, and so I feel like I finally found my calling. My one of my entrepreneurial heroes was my mom, who started a number of ventures, including a school in New York. Like she was a kind of a nonprofit, like a social entrepreneur, I would say, and. I grew up with like board meetings in my living room and watching her build this incredible school, and so I had always thought that my I think parents instilled in me the art of the possible, and that you should, if you see something that needs to be built, that you should go build it.
Yeah. So they definitely supported you when you decided that, hey, this is the road that I wanted to go down, and I wanted to just drive out to San Francisco and see what happens. You had the support of your family, eh?
They weren't well. They weren't so happy about the motorcycle, but they did support me there. Of course, like all parents worried, and but mostly want me to be happy and fulfilled. And so, um, yeah, I think in the early days, it's like, when I was out there, and sometimes when we were short on funding in the early StubHub days, we were like deferring salary and sleeping at the office and stuff like that. I think that they were, you know, nervous, but always really supportive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you got out to San Francisco, you said you ran into a company out there?
Yeah, I ended up I worked, the longer story is I worked for a company. I got out there and I got a job working at a company called TicketWeb, which was a ticketing company, and it was acquired pretty quickly by Ticketmaster, and so I was looking for a new thing to do. And when I was in finance in New York, I was a trader. And so I was approached by the founders of StubHub, the event ticket company, and the idea that they had was basically like a secondary market for event tickets. And at the time, that was like that was a pretty far forward-thinking idea. That wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It was that was something that was being done by like ticket scalpers, but nobody had tried to formalize that online and build a legitimate marketplace around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had enough experience in trading and understanding how markets work, and enough experience in tickets, that I recognized that it was a really brilliant idea. And so and the guys that were starting it, Jeff and Eric, were like really, very, very smart guys. They were both my age, but they were really smart and sort of forward thinking about this. So I joined
Mm-hmm.
them, and that was a big stroke of luck.
Okay. So you guys basically co-founded a company at that time.
Yeah, I wasn't a co-founder, but I was on the founding, founding executive team.
Right.
So well, I think when I joined, there were like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up running like sales and business development for them. And fast forward now, it's the company's about to go public, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. So I was there in the very early days, but I saw enough growth and success that it really inspired me to spend my career in startups.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long did you spend at that company before you decided that you wanted to go off on your own ventures?
Yeah, so I spent 2 years there, and I recognized that the two founders, Eric and Jeff, they had a lot of pedigree. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they met at Stanford Business School, one went to Harvard, the other went to Wharton, one worked at McKinsey. They had all this pedigree, and they were able to raise money in a very difficult market environment. Like the dot-com crash had happened, and here are these 25-year-olds with a dot-com idea. And so I thought if I could get some of that pedigree myself, that would help me, on my journey to being a founder.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into Wharton for business school, and I ended up going there. So I left StubHub to go to Wharton, and I spent kind of all of my time there working on business plans. And then after that, I worked for a couple of years at a management consulting firm called BCG. And then I started a podcast for fun, and that led to the idea for Stitcher, which was the podcast platform that I started and built and ran for 8 years.
What year was this when you started the podcast?
So I started the podcast for fun in 2006, and then I started Stitcher in 2007, and I ran it until the end of 2014.
But at that time, was podcast a thing?
It was a very small thing. It was a very niche thing.
Yeah.
When I started, they existed, but they were, you were listening to them on an iPod.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't even an iPhone then. The iPhone launched in 2008. So in some ways we were uncomfortably early. and I learned a lot of lessons about timing, and product market fit, and growth, and how to sort of engineer growth when you're early. But our big stroke of luck was that we started the company in 2007. We sort of bet on the timing of the mobile internet,
Mm-hmm.
that there was the internet, and there were devices like blackjacks, and there were like Blackberries then, and we thought we were going to build an app to that, and then the iPhone launched, and that sort of changed everything for us.
Mm-hmm. So, you were one of the first podcasts to get on the iPhone platform.
We were the first podcast app on the iPhone.
That's a big thing.
Thank you.
You say that if it's small, that's a
Yeah.
big thing.
Yeah, we were the first, and we were the biggest for a long time, we were the biggest on the iPhone until Apple launched their own podcast app, and on Android we were the biggest for years.
Wow. So I mean, you started podcast for fun, and that's what evolved into Stitcher.
Yeah, and I tell this story, and it's important now, that I spent a lot of time in business school kind of researching ideas theoretically, and you learn all of these techniques for analyzing things in business school, and then you learn even more of these techniques as a management consultant for
Mm-hmm.
SWOT analysis, and how to use Excel,
Right.
and all of those things. But I never actually like launched anything when I was in business school. I was always looking for the perfect idea and doing all the research, and what I encourage people to do is just like you want to do some research, but you find an area that you're passionate about and just jump in with an angle. The idea will invariably change over time, but you're
Mm-hmm.
going to learn a lot more if you're actually doing than you're sitting on the sidelines like doing some research.
Mm-hmm.
And so starting a podcast in 2007 was actually a bad idea,
Mm-hmm.
but it led to the idea for Stitcher, which arguably that was a bad idea too, because it was early, but it was a better idea. And it was only once I immersed myself in actually building a business
Mm-hmm.
that I saw the larger opportunity.
Right. So you mentioned that there was a learning curve for like product market fit and growth. Did you learn those stuff in business school or while you were running the podcast?
Yeah, I don't think I learned any of them, those things in business school. I mean, I certainly learned some more kind of foundational business things, but product market fit actually, at the time wasn't, like wasn't a term. Like the lean
Right.
startup, I think, had just come out and became kind of a Bible when,
Yes.
after we started Stitcher. But I learned by doing, and one of the reasons I've become a CEO coach is because pre-product market fit, the only thing that matters is finding product market fit. And then sort of after product market fit, you're growing and scaling, and they're two very different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned by asking a lot of people that were a little further along, and trying to figure it out myself, and making a ton of mistakes. And I found that if I can help CEOs to shorten the learning curve, that
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of my job now that's hugely valuable.
Right. Right. So tell us about like Stitchers, like when you actually decide to brand it into Stitcher, did you had co-founders at the time or it was just you?
Yeah, so I had two co-founders. One joined me, so I had the idea for Stitcher, and then I needed a technical co-founder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked for somebody for a while, and found Peter, and Peter and I worked together sort of informally for a while, and then he joined as CTO and co-founder. And then a little bit later in our journey, I needed another sort of business partner, and I was lucky enough to recruit somebody that I knew from BCG, Mike Ghaffari, and he joined us kind of as a business counterpart for me. So there are three of us who are co-founders of Stitcher.
Nice, nice. And at the onset, I mean, you were already running the podcast, so what were the changes that you made to make it into an official business and, you know?
So the just to distinguish that, so I started the podcast, and we did some episodes, and I sort of let that go. Like it wasn't, as soon as I had the idea for Stitcher, I really turned my attention to that. And Stitcher was was a platform, basically, like people would put their podcasts on the platform. It was like
Mm-hmm.
an aggregator of podcasts, and then
Mm-hmm.
we would help people listen to it on different platforms, and the main platforms were the iPhone and Android phones, and then we started integrating into cars, and that was a very different type of business, a venture capital backed business. So like a podcast I was like running in my out of my living room, and just funding it out of pocket,
Mm-hmm.
whereas at the time it took a lot of engineering work and support to like get Stitcher off the ground. So we raised let's see, we raised 4 rounds of financing. We raised like a friends and family, and then like a Series A, a Series B, and a Series C, sort of traditional venture capital rounds of financing. And so and the goal of that business was, at the time, I believed that this was the next form of radio.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw what was happening kind of on the music side with personalized engines like Pandora, and
Mm-hmm.
I believed that would happen on the talk side. It happened a lot slower than I would have thought,
Right.
and so, but there were a lot of learnings in having a company that was growing sort of a lot of times slow and linearly. We grew pretty linearly over the course of the 8 years I was running it.
Oh, wow. So it's not like a startup nowadays that it just you've got that hockey stick type of exponential growth where it's linear for a short time and then it just balloons. That was not the experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, in the Y Combinator definition of product market fit, we probably never had product market fit. It was always linear growth. So there were spikes along the way, but the spikes were from, like, a big podcaster talked about us, or we got featured by one of the app stores or what have you. But for the most part, it was linear growth,
Mm-hmm.
and that's hard to sustain when you're when you're on a venture path.
It is hard. I would want to think that it's easier rather than having to grow like rapidly, like overnight, like most of these startups do right now.
It's true. I mean, the challenge is that if you're on the venture path, you're basically giving away, 20% of your company every 18
Right.
months. And so you have to be growing at a pretty unnatural rate. And the reality is that most businesses, even businesses that would be successful, sort of linear growth businesses, are, linear growth businesses, and not sort of venture
Mm-hmm.
scale businesses. So eventually, Stitcher, eventually, like, after, so we exited the business, and then a media company bought it, and eventually it was sold to SiriusXM for $325 million. So, but it took a long time, and that's the thing about these types of
Mm-hmm.
companies. It generally takes a long time.
To grow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But do you think that had anything to do with just where the internet was at that time versus where it is right now, in terms of how long it took versus how quickly a startup could take off right now?
Yeah, I mean the timing is everything, and so I think specifically with Stitcher, it had to do with where podcast adoption was. And 2014 was the year that we sold it, and that was also the year that the podcast Serial came out. And Serial, as you probably remember, was like it was hugely popular, and it got podcasting to take off. There were,
Mm-hmm.
there were sort of there were early adopters of podcasts before then, but that's sort of what was the leap to mainstream for podcasts. And so, we were naturally early, and timing is everything with startups, but you can be early and still be successful. You just have to be really careful with capital. But there,
Right.
but with startups, and particularly exponential growth startups, it's generally there's a market or technology condition that changes that results in the next one, because most of the ideas are not new ideas. It's been
Mm-hmm.
tried many times before.
Mm-hmm.
I went to business school with a lot of people that started, companies that were similar to YouTube. They were just a little
Mm-hmm.
too early.
Right, right, right. The timing. And and how did you go about like raising funds? I know you said you started with family first, but after that, like how did you know where to go? Was it easy to find somewhere because you were in San Francisco?
No, it was really hard. So the friends and family round was easy because StubHub had an exit around the same time, and so everybody from the startups, like from StubHub's executive team, invested, and so that was great for timing. Unfortunately, they all were tired and didn't want to go again, so I wasn't able to hire, like I wasn't able to recruit
Mm-hmm.
from StubHub, but it was really good from a fundraising perspective. And then our first venture round was in 2008, and 2008 was not a great time to raise money. It was
Yes, definitely.
and 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 to make matters worse, most VCs had lost money on either podcasts or mobile or both.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pitched, I think, 110 VCs before I pitched all the VCs out here. They all passed. And eventually we found a investing partner in the Northeast, and they were forward looking enough to invest in us, but it took that round was very difficult. The next round was a little bit easier. I was also probably, because it was so difficult, I probably got good. I know I got good at raising money, and
Mm-hmm.
so that made the subsequent rounds easier to raise.
And where did you find these people?
Well, I had a pretty strong network from StubHub, and then also from Wharton and from BCG, and so I basically networked my way into getting the right introductions
Right.
to the venture folks. So I was in that way, my experience at StubHub, and recognizing that the founders had this like pedigree. The
Mm-hmm.
pedigree was helpful for that reason. It was helpful to because it opened enough doors for me to be able to get the introductions that I needed, but it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. And you did hire people to help you, the three of you eventually, right?
Yeah. We hired a lot of people. So yeah, over time, I think we were probably 40 or so, kind of at the max, plus another 20 like contractors, so maybe 60 people in
Mm-hmm.
total. Um, and yeah, it was a very different company at that time than it was at the beginning.
Nice, nice. And then you said, was it in 2014 you said that you eventually exited?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And all three of you exited at the same time?
Yeah, Peter stayed on. He was the CTO, so he stayed on with the acquiring company, and he stayed, I think, actually through the exit to Sirius XM. I think he stayed till 2020, and a lot of the team stayed. Mike had left. Mike spent a couple of years in the business, and then he went into another operating role. So he was there, I think, 2007 to 2009, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then I left at the acquisition.
Okay. And then right after that, you went into coaching?
Well, my coaching story is an interesting one. As you start to be successful as a founder, other people start to come to you for advice. Other founders come to you for advice. And I remember when I was running Stitcher that I found that experience really gratifying. I really liked helping other founders. And then after Stitcher, I didn't do anything for a couple of years. I just like slept. I was exhausted, and I invested in a bunch of startups. And I found that I didn't like investing very much, but I did really like helping the founders that I invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, I took a role at AWS, and eventually ended up running the startup business development team there, and had the same experience. We're working with a lot of early stage startups, a lot of Y Combinator startups, and I just really enjoyed helping founders.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be an investor. I didn't think that was something I was particularly good at. So I started coaching first kind of more informally, and then I did some coach training and started coaching more formally when I was in my AWS job. And eventually I like had enough clients that I couldn't do both jobs, and decided I wanted to be a full-time coach. So I left that job in December, and I've been a full-time coach for 7 months now, but
Mm-hmm.
been doing it for a lot longer.
Nice, nice. So I guess you really love coaching. And you've coached like a number of people now, I would assume, like since 2014 until now.
Yeah, I've coached a lot formally and informally. I tend to, now that I have formal coaching relationships, I tend to work with my clients for a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still my first, I think, 5 clients I'm still working with, and it's been years now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but in as an advisor and investor, and in my job at AWS, I've coached hundreds of founders.
Mm-hmm. Do you find it difficult? Like it sounds like you got clients when you became a coach, and it sounds like you're still working with those same people. So, are you saying basically as a coach you probably need like 10 people and then you're good for a while?
Yeah, for me it's 20.
Yeah.
I have 20 clients. I'm actually like full. I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to take more clients now.
Mm-hmm.
But I 20 was the initial number that I thought would be good.
Mm-hmm.
I meet with my clients twice a month for 80
Yeah.
minutes at a time.
Right.
That's sort of the minimum, and then I'll spend as much time with them as they need, but that tends to be a cadence that works. So that's about 10 a week,
Mm-hmm.
plus, and so that's sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
and gives me the opportunity to still do some building on the side and be available to them when they need me ad hoc, when they call me or text me and need to get on a call. It seems to be, but maybe the number's higher. I don't know. Well, I'm at 20 now and deciding whether or not to take any additional clients.
Yeah. And what are they usually requesting from you?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of 2 stages of a startup. At the early stage, and we are talking about this a little bit earlier. There's sort of the pre-product market fit
Mm-hmm.
stage, and then there's post-product market fit when you're scaling. And so, pre-product market fit, really the only thing that matters is product market fit, finding product market fit, or finding some customers that will pay for your product, and building your product, and yeah, getting some revenue, and building an actual business.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, so I work with a few that are at that stage. Most of the founders that I work with are a little bit further along, but at that stage, managing one's own energies and focusing on the right thing and running it like a marathon, not a sprint. You know, the 25-year-olds are working 120-hour weeks and not having any balance and helping them to recognize that like if they're successful, they're going to be doing this for 10 years and they need to like find some balance, and balance will actually help them. And then being very prescriptive about the experiments that they're going to run, and balancing talking to customers and building. Those are the two things that you need to be doing pre-product market fit, and the anything else you're doing is basically a waste of time. So pre-product market fit, those are basically the two areas. And then post-product market fit, your job changes. All of a sudden you get like you raise a Series A, you got a pile of cash. You have to hire a bunch of people who are smarter than you and older than you in a lot of cases, and know how to do a specific task better than you, and manage them. And so for that period, a lot of it is about the mechanics of scaling yourself, and how how to have a one-on-one, how to have an all hands, how to set up a hiring structure, and how to make sure that you're focused on the right things and that you're on offense and not on defense. I find that most leaders, especially for first-time managers, are either too direct when they're talking to others, or not direct enough, and both of those can be pretty damaging. And so helping them to find a center is really important. And then continuing to like manage themselves and make sure that I based on my own experiences and sort of burning out, working too much at the beginning of Stitcher, I care deeply and believe deeply in prioritizing oneself as prioritizing the startup. And so making sure that they're getting enough sleep and, eating well and having a bit of balance in their life is really important.
Right, right. And from your experience with working with all of these startup founders, what are the major challenges that they usually have?
Well, pre-product market fit is just sort of finding what the thing is. And I think the biggest challenge there is like, if there's some signal that something's working, but it's not working kind of fast enough, whether or not you should pivot or not. I think determining earlier on whether or not to pivot is a pretty meaningful challenge. And then post product market fit, it really, there's a million challenges, but a lot of it comes down to hiring the right group of humans and structuring it in the right way. And also there's invariably plateaus of growth, and figuring out kind of how to unlock the next level of growth. And that's challenging, and it's a multivariate challenge. And a lot of the challenge the CEO may think is a external challenge, but it's actually an internal challenge. They're blocked somehow within them, and helping to unblock them helps unblock their company.
A lot of founders, they have a good product that they made, but then you need to get it out there and start to get feedback. And that's where I think a lot of them find it to be difficult, because now they have to go out there and be more like a salesperson to find people to give them feedback. Do you see that as a difficulty for most founders? And how would you coach them across that?
Yeah, I think it's gotten better over time, because I think that there's a lot of kind of writing about this, but the teams that are very sort of eng background tend to want to build and think they know what the customer wants, and then they build for too long, and then they realize that they don't actually have a market for the thing that they built. And so I think it's I think it's changed a bit with kind of all of the because it's a lot easier to reach customers now,
Mm-hmm.
but there still tends to be that bias. Whereas like if I was to start something new, the first thing I would do is like build landing pages and validate that they're actually, somebody actually wants this
Mm-hmm.
before building the thing. And I think that that's become a little bit more standard, but still probably not enough in some circles.
Mm-hmm. And you'd say build a landing page and promote the landing page to the customer that you're trying to target.
Yeah, I think that if you think about it in terms of like you think that there's this thing that is going to like solve a problem in the world, then the best way to sort of sequence the work that you do to build the thing and get it out there is like what things do you have to determine in order for this to be validated,
Mm-hmm.
and then like what and then put those things in order of difficulty, and starting with the least difficult. And so one of the things, if you're building a new thing for like consumers, let's say, let me come up with a real example. So let's say I think that I saw something on this the other day. Let's say I think that speech text to speech is good enough now that you could create audiobooks using text to speech instead of, paying $10,000 or $15,000 to have somebody to have an actor sort of narrate your book. And I think that there would be a market for that because you could sell it to you could sell it to longer tail authors as like a way to like their audiobook. And so
Mm-hmm.
the product is basically like, and for $299 you can take your book and have it turned into an audiobook, let's say. So this is the product I'm trying to validate. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing I'm going to do before I go build that speech to text engine or figure out what the best model is for it or whatever, text to speech engine, is to see whether or not there's actually a market for it. I'm going to build a landing page and I want to reach out to authors of sort of long tail books and drive them to the landing page and see whether or not they'd actually pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would sequence that.
Right. Right. And I mean, you mentioned text to speech. Um, how do you think AI is changing the landscape right now for startup founders?
I mean, it's changing the landscape, but it's unfathomable to me what it's going to look like in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't think I'm that forward thinking. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's mind blowing. I don't think I'm going to say anything that's not obvious, but just the rate at which you can build things, both as an engineer and as a non-engineer,
Mm-hmm.
has reduced the like there's so much less friction to getting a product to market. There's almost no friction to getting a product to market and sort of testing that product by just
Mm-hmm.
stringing together like simple workflows and
Mm-hmm.
and AI tools. And so the question then becomes like, so where does that leave us? Are we just going to have a lot of products out there that like, um, and that's really unclear to me, but it is it's incredible. I mean, like what a time to be building.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the I mean I'm trying to be focused full time on coaching,
Mm-hmm.
but have found that I'm spending more time hacking around with stuff because it's just incredible like
Yeah.
what you can build now.
Nice. Nice. And I guess you find a lot of people are coming to you with AI powered startups.
Yeah, they're sort of they're AI core startups. So I have a couple of founders who are building like deep, sort of deep, like at the model level, And then there are AI kind of adjacent, which are like I have a couple of founder clients who are building like security, like corporate security for AI to make sure that people aren't putting the wrong things into ChatGPT as an example. And then there's there are the wrapper companies, and then there are companies that are not in AI at all, but are just using AI as you and I are in our
Mm-hmm.
in our daily function now, just because it makes things so much easier. So it's permeating everything at some level,
Mm-hmm.
some more deeply than others.
Mm-hmm. And uh, co-founder, solo founder, especially in the age of AI, what do you recommend?
I think it depends on the person. For me, it can be lonely
Mm-hmm.
when you're sort of throwing things at a wall. Some people like it to be sort of by themselves and kind of locked in their room and locked in. I think we're going to see a lot more. We already are seeing a lot more
Mm-hmm.
like one person, very profitable,
Mm-hmm.
tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue startups. Those are starting. They're just stringing together agents and like I mean
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible. I think there are going to be a lot more very small teams of folks who are really good at complementary to each other at taking a kind of a wide patch of area and sort of stringing agents together.
Mm-hmm.
And but like I think that the one person versus two person model I think is still up to the individual in terms of like how they're motivated and whether or not they complement another person well,
Mm-hmm.
or prefer to like work in a vacuum.
Right. So, are you working on anything now for yourself?
I'm hacking around with some things, like dog fooding some things for myself
Yeah.
as a coach to help me be a better coach. That if it helps me be a better coach, that it might, help others to be better coaches as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sort of playing around with some things, and then I'm just sort of fascinated by it all, and so I'm spending more time. Yeah, I'm spending more time looking at like little kind of big business things that I could hack together, but maybe mainly for the purpose of building landing pages and simple software in this new world,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
versus like kind of. But I'm trying to kind of stay in my lane as a coach and
Mm-hmm.
be focused on, what can I do? For my job as a coach, I use LLMs to help me be a better coach. And the way that I do that is I ask my clients for permission to transcribe our sessions. And I transcribe them and I run it through like a PII scrubber so that like, because the conversations are very confidential.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have purpose built like projects in Claude and in ChatGPT that basically have a bunch of coaching frameworks and gospel
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And after every session, I put the session into the into those projects, and I ask it what I did well, what I can improve on, and to score me as a coach. And it's been it has improved my learning curve a lot.
Right.
And so yeah, and so I'm hacking around with other things kind of in that space.
No, I find it improved my learning curve a lot too. Like it's amazing what you can do now. 'Cause it explains it to you and it never gets tired of explaining and answering you. It's just amazing how fast, like in the middle of the night, you can wake up and ask it something and it's gonna answer you.
Yeah,
You know.
it's incredible. And I also like my 4-year-old asks the questions, and I have a nice like I like my chat GPT voice is like a female British accent, and she's like, what a great question, Charlie. Why do trees fall in the forest? And it's just amazing. And then the AI can explain it better than I
Yes.
can.
Yes.
How does rocket propulsion work for a 4-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
How does
Mm-hmm.
why is there less gravity on the moon? Like those kind of questions. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, how do I explain that? I mean, I know, but like how do I explain that to a 4-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah. It can add the right context for the right people. No, it's great. But no, where can people find you?
Startupceo.coach.
Mm-hmm.
And
Are you on LinkedIn or?
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well, and it's just my name, Noah, Noah, and my last name is Shanok, Shanok.
Okay, great. We're gonna drop that in the description as well. But Noah, I want to thank you for coming through and sharing your experience and your knowledge as a startup coach. I'm absolutely sure that people are gonna learn a lot from what you've given us today.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for having me, Mark. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you.
Take care.